Good morning, and here we are on chapter 18. I have to warn you in advance, we're having a bit of a storm here, so if I cut out halfway through, I'll come back and make a part 2, I promise. And I do intend to finish, but I don't control the internet or the power. So, chapter 18, Dobby's Reward. For a moment, there was silence as Harry, Ron, Ginny, and Lockhart stood in the doorway, covered in muck and slime, and, in Harry's case, blood. Then there was a scream. Good morning, Katie. Hi. Jenny! It was Mrs. Weasley, who had been sitting crying in front of the fire. She leapt to her feet, closely followed by Mr. Weasley, and both of them flung themselves on their daughter. Harry, however, was looking past them. Professor Dumbledore was standing by the mantelpiece, beaming, next to Professor McGonagall, who was taking great, steadying steps, clutching her chest. Fox went whooshing past Harry's ear and settled on Dumbledore's shoulder, just as Harry found himself and Ron being swept into Mrs. Weasley's tight embrace. All right, so in the last chapter, if you didn't miss it, Fox was basically an unofficial proxy for Dumbledore. Fox basically did everything. He killed the serpent, he brought the sword, he flew them out of there. And Fox is very strongly tied with Dumbledore. So it's like, I'm directly helping you, but I'm not directly helping you. Little plausible deniability. So that just kind of seals the thing where it's like, yes, I knew, and I was helping. Fox went whooshing past Harry's ear and settled on Dumbledore's shoulder, just as Harry found himself and Ron being swept into Mrs. Weasley's tight embrace. You saved her. You saved her. How did you do it? I think we'd all like to know that, said Professor McGonagall weakly. Mrs. Weasley let go of Harry, who hesitated for a moment, then walked over to the desk and laid upon it the sorting hat, the ruby-encrusted sword, and what remained of Riddle's diary. Then he started telling them everything. For nearly a quarter of an hour he spoke into the rapt silence. He told them about hearing the disembodied voice, how Hermione had finally realized that he was hearing a basilisk in the pipes, how he and Ron had followed the spiders into the forest, that Aragog had told them where the last victim of the basilisk had died, how he had guessed that Moaning Myrtle had been the victim, and that the entrance to the Chamber of Secrets might be in her bathroom. Very well, Professor McGonagall prompted him as he paused. So you found out where the entrance was. Breaking 100 school rules into pieces along the way, I might add. But how on earth did you all get out of there alive, Potter? So Harry, his voice now growing hoarse from all this talking, told them about Fox's timely arrival and about the sorting hat giving him the sword. But then he faltered. He had so far avoided mentioning Riddle's diary, or Ginny. She was standing with her head against Mrs. Weasley's shoulder, and tears were still coursing silently down her cheeks. What if they expelled her? Harry thought in panic. Riddle's diary didn't work anymore. How could they prove it had been he who'd made her do it all? Instinctively, Harry looked at Dumbledore, who smiled faintly, the firelight glancing off his half-moon spectacles. What interests me most, said Dumbledore gently, is how Lord Voldemort managed to enchant Ginny, when my sources tell me he is currently in hiding in the forests of Albania. So, just a pause real quick. Man, that is an ethical dilemma for Harry, because sure, he doesn't want to out what happened to Jenny, and he doesn't want anything bad to happen to her. But here's the thing. If it never comes out, then nobody ever tells her that it was okay. And I don't know how to solve that problem. Not yet. We'll think about it. Relief, warm, sweeping, glorious relief, swept over Harry. What's that? Said Mr. Weasley in a stunned voice. You know who? And enchant Ginny? But Jenny's not. Ginny hasn't been. Has she? It was this diary, said Harry quickly, picking it up and showing it to Dumbledore. Riddle wrote it when he was 16. Dumbledore took the diary from Harry and peered keenly down his long, crooked nose at its burnt and soggy pages. Brilliant, he said softly. Of course, he was probably the most brilliant student Hogwarts has ever seen. He turned around to the Weasleys, who were looking utterly bewildered. Very few people know that Lord Voldemort was once called Tom Riddle. I taught him myself 50 years ago at Hogwarts. He disappeared after leaving this school, traveled far and wide, sank so deeply into the dark arts, consorted with the very worst of our kind, underwent so many dangerous magical transformations, that when he resurfaced as Lord Voldemort, he was barely recognizable. Hardly anyone connected Lord Voldemort with the clever, handsome boy who was once head boy here. But, Jenny, said Mrs. Weasley, what's our Jenny got to do with him? His diary, Jenny sobbed. I've been writing in it, and he's been writing back all year. Jenny, said Mr. Weasley, flabbergasted, haven't I taught you anything? What have I always told you? Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain. Why didn't you show the diary to me or your mother? A suspicious object like that, it was clearly full of dark magic. Okay. While I appreciate Arthur's concern, the way he's reacting now is definitely guaranteed to make sure that she never wants to share or speak up about this experience. This is the way to shut down the conversation. Yeah, he is. It is absolutely relevant for AI. You're right. Clearly full of dark magic. I didn't know, sobbed Jenny. I found it inside one of the books Mom got me. I thought someone had just left it there and forgotten about it. Mrs. Weasley should go up to the hospital wing right away. Dumbledore interrupted in a firm voice. This has been a terrible ordeal for her. There will be no punishment. Good job, Dumbledore. Nicely done. Older and wiser wizards than she have been hoodwinked by Lord Voldemort. He strode over to the door and opened it. Bed rest and perhaps a large, steaming mug of hot chocolate. I always find that cheers me up, he added, twinkling kindly down at her. You'll find that Madame Pomfrey is still awake. She's just giving out mandrake juice. I dare say the basilisk's victims will be waking up any moment. Well, it certainly doesn't sound like he's making a safe environment for her to open up about her experience, because she's getting blamed for her choices or lack of discretion. So Hermione's okay, said Ron brightly. There's been no lasting harm done, Jenny, said Dumbledore. Mrs. Weasley led Jenny out, and Mr. Weasley followed, still looking deeply shaken. You know, Minerva, Professor Dumbledore said thoughtfully to Professor McGonagall, I think all this merits a good feast. Might I ask you to go and alert the kitchens? Right, said Professor McGonagall crisply, also moving to the door. I'll leave you to deal with Potter and Weasley, shall I? Certainly, said Dumbledore. She left, and Harry and Ron gazed uncertainly at Dumbledore. What exactly had Professor McGonagall meant? Deal with him. Surely they weren't about to be punished. I seem to remember telling you both that I would have to expel you if you broke any more school rules, said Dumbledore. Oh yeah, Dumbledore's absolutely helping the situation. It kind of doesn't matter really what his intent was. That was so perfectly played for that. And I think he's about to do it again. I'm loving this chapter. Ron opened his mouth in horror. Which goes to show that the best of us must sometimes eat our words, Dumbledore went on, smiling. You'll both receive special awards for services to the school, and, let me see, yes, I think 200 points apiece for Gryffindor. All right, we're doing the favoritism thing in the final chapter yet again. Just saying. Ron went brightly pink as Lockhart's Valentine flowers and closed his mouth again. But one of us seems to be keeping mightily quiet about his part in this dangerous adventure, Dumbledore added. Why so modest, Gilderoy? Yeah, come up in part. Harry gave a start. He had completely forgotten about Lockhart. He turned and saw that Lockhart was standing in a corner of the room, still wearing his vague smile. When Dumbledore addressed him, Lockhart looked over his shoulder to see who he was talking to. Professor Dumbledore, Ron said quickly. There was an accident down in the Chamber of Secrets. Professor Lockhart. Am I a professor? Said Lockhart in mild surprise. Goodness, I expect I was hopeless, wasn't I? He tried to do a memory charm and the wand backfired, Ron explained quietly to Dumbledore. Excuse me. Dear me, said Dumbledore, shaking his head, his long silver mustache quivering. Impaled upon your own sword, Gilderoy. Sword, said Lockhart dimly. Haven't got a sword. That boy has, though. He pointed at Harry. He'll lend you one. Would you mind taking Professor Lockhart up to the infirmary too? Dumbledore said to Ron. I'd like a few more words with Harry. I'd like to point out an interesting symmetry because in the book we had two things going on. The Lockhart story arc and our Tom Riddle story arc. And in a sense, they're actually the same because Lockhart was empty and manipulative, and he gained what he got by deception and lies and manipulation, which is exactly Tom Riddle's play. So the overall theme of book 2 feels like to me is be critical in your thinking about people because sometimes they're just empty and they're trying to get you, just as an overall theme. Lockhart ambled out. Ron cast a curious look back at Dumbledore and Harry as he closed the door. Dumbledore crossed to one of the chairs by the fire. Sit down, Harry, he said, and Harry sat, feeling unaccountably nervous. First of all, Harry, I want to thank you, said Dumbledore, eyes twinkling again. You must have shown me real loyalty down in the chamber. Nothing but that could have called Fawkes to you. Dumbledore's eyes all a-twinkling. Plans are coming to fruition. Right? Here's some awards. Heck yeah, he did. He stroked the phoenix, which had fluttered down onto his knee. Harry grinned awkwardly as Dumbledore watched him. And so you met Tom Riddle, said Dumbledore thoughtfully. I imagine he was most interested in you. Suddenly, something that was nagging at Harry came tumbling out of his mouth. Professor Dumbledore, Riddle said I'm like him. Strange likenesses, he said. Did he now? Said Dumbledore, looking thoughtfully at Harry from under his thick silver eyebrows. And what do you think, Harry? I don't think I'm like him, said Harry more loudly than he'd intended. I mean, I'm in Gryffindor. But he fell silent, a lurking doubt resurfacing in his mind. Professor, he started again after a moment, the Sorting Hat told me I'd have done well in Slytherin. Everyone thought I was Slytherin's heir for a while, because I can speak Parseltongue. You can speak Parseltongue, Harry? Said Dumbledore calmly, because Lord Voldemort, who is the last remaining descendant of Salazar Slytherin, can speak Parseltongue. 1 second for a coffee break. I will say, if you ever want to go back and watch the remasters, you don't have to watch me burp, sneeze, cough, or drink coffee. I cut all that stuff out. Can speak Parseltongue. Unless I'm much mistaken, he transferred some of his own powers to you the night he gave you that scar. Not something he intended to do, I'm sure. Voldemort put a bit of himself in me, Harry said, thunderstruck. It certainly seems so. So I should be in Slytherin, Harry said, looking desperately into Dumbledore's face. The Sorting Hat could see Slytherin's power in me, and it put you in Gryffindor, said Dumbledore calmly. Listen to me, Harry. You happen to have many qualities Salazar Slytherin prized in his hand-picked students. His own very rare gift, Parseltongue, resourcefulness, determination. Resourcefulness and determination. We're speaking Harry's language. A certain disregard for rules, he added, his mustache quivering again. Yet the sorting hat placed you in Gryffindor. You know why that was? Think. It only put me in Gryffindor, said Harry in a defeated voice, because I asked not to go in Slytherin. Choice. Exactly, said Dumbledore, beaming once more, which makes you very beaming once more, like a proud mentor. Dumbledore is very proud in this moment, which makes you very different from Tom Riddle. It is our choices, Harry, that show what we truly are, far more than our abilities. Harry sat motionless in his chair, stunned. If you want proof, Harry, that you belong in Gryffindor, I suggest you look more closely at this. Dumbledore reached across to Professor McGonagall's desk, picked up the blood-stained silver sword, and handed it to Harry. Dully, Harry turned it over, the rubies blazing in the firelight, and then he saw the name engraved just below the hilt. Godric Gryffindor. Only a true Gryffindor could have pulled that out of the hat, Harry, said Dumbledore simply. For a minute, neither of them spoke. Then Dumbledore pulled open one of the drawers in Professor McGonagall's desk and took out a quill and a bottle of ink. What you need, Harry, is some food and sleep. I suggest you go down to the feast while I write to Azkaban. We need our gamekeeper back. Nicely tied up there. And I must draft an advertisement for the Daily Prophet, too, he added thoughtfully. We'll be needing a new defense against the dark arts teacher. Again. Dear me, we do seem to run through them, don't we? You guys sure do. It is a great line. Yeah. Harry got up and crossed to the door. He had just reached for the handle, however, when the door burst open so violently that it bounced back off the wall. Oh, here we go. Lucius Malfoy stood there, fury in his face, and cowering behind his legs, wrapped heavily in bandages, was Dobby. Good evening, Lucius, said Dumbledore pleasantly. Mr. Malfoy almost knocked Harry over as he swept into the room. Dobby went scurrying in after him, crouching at the hem of his cloak, a look of abject terror on his face. The elf was carrying a stained rag with which he was attempting to finish cleaning Mr. Malfoy's shoes. Apparently, Mr. Malfoy had set out in a great hurry, for not only were his shoes half polished, but his usually sleek hair was disheveled. Ignoring the elf bobbing apologetically around his ankles, he fixed his cold eyes on Dumbledore. So, he said, you've come back. The governor suspended you, but you still saw fit to return to Hogwarts. Well, you see, Lucius, said Dumbledore, smiling serenely. The other 11 governors contacted me today. It was something like being caught in a hailstorm of owls, to tell the truth. They'd heard that Arthur Weasley's daughter had been killed and wanted me back here at once. They seemed to think I was the best man for the job after all. Very strange tales they told me, too. Several of them seemed to think that you had threatened to curse their families if they didn't agree to suspend me in the first place. Mr. Malfoy went even paler than usual, but his eyes were still slits of fury. So have you stopped the attacks yet? He sneered. Have you caught the culprit? We have, said Dumbledore with a smile. Well, said Mr. Malfoy sharply, who is it? The same person as last time, Lucius, said Dumbledore, but this time Lord Voldemort was acting through somebody else, by means of this diary. He held up the small black book with the large hole through the center, watching Mr. Malfoy closely. Harry, however, was watching Dobby. The elf was doing something very odd. His great eyes fixed meaningfully on Harry. He kept pointing at the diary, then at Mr. Malfoy, then hitting himself hard on the head with his fists. I see, said Mr. Malfoy slowly to Dumbledore. A clever plan, said Dumbledore in a level voice, still staring Mr. Malfoy straight in the eye. Because if Harry here, Mr. Malfoy shot Harry a swift, sharp look, and his friend Ron hadn't discovered this book, why, Ginny Weasley might have taken all the blame. Oh, yeah. Nice. Yeah, and now If if Dumbledore and Lucius are having this conversation, that also means Dumbledore showing Lucius that, hey, I've got a little piece of leverage because I know you were involved. The blame. No one would ever have been able to prove she hadn't acted of her own free will. Mr. Malfoy said nothing. His face was suddenly mask-like. Oh, we know that we've been called out. And imagine, Dumbledore went on, what might have happened then. The Weasleys are one of our most prominent pure-blood families. Imagine the effect on Arthur Weasley and his Muggle Protection Act if his own daughter was discovered attacking and killing Muggleborns. Very fortunate the diary was discovered and Riddle's memories wiped from it. Who knows what the consequences might have been otherwise? Mr. Malfoy forced himself to speak. Very fortunate, he replied stiffly. And still, behind his back, Dobby was pointing, fists to the diary, then to Lucius Malfoy, then punching himself in the head. Because Harry hasn't caught on yet. Dumbledore obviously has. And Harry suddenly understood. He nodded at Dobby, and Dobby backed into a corner, now twisting his ears in punishment. Don't you want to know how Ginny got hold of that diary, Mr. Malfoy? Said Harry. Lucius Malfoy rounded on him. Delicious. He's telling on himself so hard right now. Lucius Malfoy rounded on him. How should I know how the stupid little girl got hold of it? He said. Because you gave it to her, said Harry, in flourish and blots. You picked up her old Transfiguration book and slipped the diary inside it, didn't you? He saw Mr. Malfoy's white hands clench and unclench. Prove it, he hissed. Oh, no one will be able to do that. Sorry about that. Oh, no one will be able to do that, said Dumbledore, smiling at Harry. Not now that Riddle has vanished from the book. On the other hand, I would advise you, Lucius, not to go giving out any more of Lord Voldemort's old school things. If any more of them find their way into innocent hands, I think Arthur Weasley, for one, will make sure they are traced back to you. Lucius Malfoy stood for a moment, and Harry distinctly saw his right hand twitch, as though he were longing to reach for his wand. Instead, he turned to his house elf. We're going, Dobby. Well, yeah, he's running scared now. He thought he had the upper hand, and now he's on the back foot. He's on the defense. Sword of Damocles hanging over his head. Dumbledore's got leverage. Lucius is about to fly off the handle. He wrenched open the door, and as the elf came hurrying up to him, he kicked him right through it. They could hear Dobby squealing with pain all the way along the corridor. Harry stood for a moment, thinking hard. Then it came to him. Professor Dumbledore, he said hurriedly, can I give that diary back to Mr. Malfoy, please? Certainly, Harry, said Dumbledore calmly, but hurry. The feast, remember. See, I love what's going to happen here because even though Harry has just been through so much, he still has the time and the space to have empathy for somebody who's being treated worse than him. That's beautiful. Harry grabbed the diary and dashed out of his office. He could hear Dobby's squeals of pain receding around the corner. Quickly wondering if this plan could possibly work, Harry took off one of his shoes, pulled off his slimy, filthy sock, and stuffed the diary into it. Then he stuffed the diary into the sock? Okay. Then he ran down the dark corridor. He caught up with him at the top of the stairs. Mr. Malfoy, he gasped, skidding to a halt. I've got something for you. And he forced the smelly sock into Lucius Malfoy's hand. What the? Mr. Malfoy ripped the sock off the diary, threw it aside, then looked furiously from the ruined book to Harry. You'll meet the same sticky end as your parents one of these days, Harry Potter, he said softly. They were meddlesome fools, too. He turned to go. Well, yeah. Well, I don't think Lucius really orchestrated it. I think Voldemort did. Heck yeah. He turned to go. Come, Dobby. I said come. But Dobby didn't move. He was holding up Harry's disgusting, slimy sock and looking at it as though it were a priceless treasure. Master has given us sock, said the elf in wonderment. Master gave it to Dobby. What's that? Spat Mr. Malfoy. What did you say? Got a sock, said Dobby in disbelief. Master threw it, and Dobby caught it, and Dobby is free. Lucius Malfoy stood frozen, staring at the elf, and then he lunged at Harry. You lost me my servant, boy. But Dobby shouted, You shall not harm Harry Potter. There was a loud bang, and Mr. Malfoy was thrown backward. He crashed down the stairs 3 at a time, landing in a crumpled heap on the landing below. He got up, his face livid, and pulled out his wand, but Dobby raised a long, threatening finger. You shall go now, he said fiercely, pointing down at Mr. Malfoy. You shall not touch Harry Potter. You shall go now. Lucius Malfoy had no choice. With a last, incensed stare at the pair of them, he swung his cloak around him and hurried out of sight. Harry Potter freed Dobby, said the elf shrilly, gazing up at Harry. Moonlight from the nearest window reflected in his orb-like eyes. Harry Potter set Dobby free. Okay. We'll wait and see. It's just a theory. Least I could do, Dobby, said Harry, grinning. Just promise never... No, yeah, that makes sense, actually. Good call. Least I could do, Dobby, said Harry, grinning. Just promise never to try and save my life again. Words said in haste. The elf's ugly brown face split suddenly into a wide, toothy smile. I've just got one question, Dobby, said Harry, as Dobby pulled on Harry's sock with shaking hands. You told me all this had nothing to do with he who must not be named, remember? Well, it was a clue, sir, said Dobby, his eyes widening as though this was obvious. Was giving you a clue. The Dark Lord, before he changed his name, could be freely named, you see. Right, said Harry weakly. Well, I'd better go. There's a feast, and my friend Hermione should be awake by now. Dobby threw his arms round Harry's middle and hugged him. Harry Potter is greater by far than Dobby knew, he sobbed. Farewell, Harry Potter. And with a final loud crack, Dobby disappeared. Harry had been to several Hogwarts feasts, but never one quite like this. Everyone was in their pajamas, and the celebration lasted all night. Harry didn't know whether the best bit was Hermione running toward him screaming, You solved it! You solved it! Or Justin hurrying over from the Hufflepuff table to wring his hand and apologize endlessly for suspecting him. Or Hagrid, turning up at 3:30, cuffing Harry and Ron so hard on the shoulders that they were knocked into their plates of trifle. Or his and Ron's 400 points for Gryffindor securing the House Cup for the 2nd year running. Excuse me. Or Professor McGonagall standing up to tell them all that the exams had been canceled as a school treat. Oh no, said Hermione. Or Dumbledore announcing that unfortunately Professor Lockhart would be unable to return next year, owing to the fact that he needed to go away and get his memory back. I will point out that I'm actually with Hermione on this one. I love tests. I would be quite disappointed if I didn't have a chance to show off how well I've understood and retained the material. I'd be disappointed too. That's my OCPD side though. For everybody else, I get it. Quite a few of the teachers joined in the cheering that greeted this news. Shame, said Ron, helping himself to a jam donut. He was starting to grow on me. The rest of the final term passed in a haze of blazing sunshine. Hogwarts was back to normal with only a few small differences. Defense against the dark arts classes were canceled, but we've had plenty of practice at that anyway, Ron told a disgruntled Hermione. And Lucius Malfoy had been sacked as a school governor. Draco was no longer strutting around the school as though he owned the place. On the contrary, he looked resentful and sulky. On the other hand, Jenny Weasley was perfectly happy again. All right, one more coffee break, and then I think we're going to get through this. Thanks for bearing with me. On the other hand, Jenny Weasley was perfectly happy again. I wonder how they've accomplished this thing. Too soon, it was time for the journey home on the Hogwarts Express. Harry, Ron, Hermione, Fred, George, and Ginny got a compartment to themselves. They made the most of the last few hours in which they were allowed to do They're not cats. They're not going to do meowgic. In which they were allowed to do magic before the holidays. They played Exploding Snap, set off at the very last of Fred and George's filibuster fireworks, and practiced disarming each other by magic. Harry was getting very good at it. They were almost at King's Cross when Harry remembered something. Ginny, what did you see Percy doing? Jenny, what did you see Percy doing that he didn't want you to tell anyone? Oh, excellent point. Right. That's maybe just what Harry wanted to see. Maybe that's just what she was showing the world. The brave face, a mask to cover the trauma. That's a good catch. I like that. Oh, that, said Ginny, giggling. Well, Percy's got a girlfriend. Fred dropped a stack of books on George's head. What? It's that Ravenclaw prefect, Penelope Clearwater, said Ginny. That's who he was writing to all last summer. He's been meeting her all over the school in secret. I walked in on them kissing in an empty classroom one day. He was so upset when she was, attacked. You won't tease him, will you? She added anxiously. Still concerned. A little gossipy, but still concerned. Wouldn't dream of it, said Fred, who was looking like his birthday had come early. Definitely not, said George, sniggering. The Hogwarts Express slowed and finally stopped. Harry pulled out his quill and a bit of parchment and turned to Ron and Hermione. This is called a telephone number, he told Ron, scribbling it twice, tearing the parchment in two, and handing it to them. I told your dad how to use a telephone last summer. He'll know. Call me at the Dursleys, okay? I can't stand another 2 months with only Dudley to talk to. Your aunt and uncle will be proud, though, won't they? Said Hermione, as they got off the train and joined the crowd thronging toward the enchanted barrier. When they hear what you did this year? Proud? Said Harry. Are you crazy? All those times I could have died and I didn't manage it? They'll be furious. And together they walked back through the gateway to the Muggle world. All right, so if you remember when we broke Harry out of the house in the flying car, the Weasleys are now tracking how bad the Dursleys are, but Hermione has not yet seen it for herself. So she's not fully in awareness. Oh. And speaking of being back into the Muggle world, that's where we are now. This ends the Chamber of Secrets, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I'm going to take Monday and Tuesday off, and then I will schedule us another live reading for Wednesday, and I'll see you then with book 3. Right? Sneaky. Very sneaky. Loved having the comments going. I hope we keep that going, so I'll try to schedule these more often. Thanks for joining me. See you guys soon. Bye.